Hey everybody, welcome back to Feedback Loop. I'm Joey.
And I'm Jeremy.
And this week we don't have a guest, so sorry if you thought that was going to be a running thing.
we might at some point in the future again when it becomes pertinent.
But this week we do not have one. It's just us, so live with
it. We
it.
are the guests.
But yeah, this week we're kind of running with random topics here, and we stumbled upon the idea of how our parents may or may not have influenced our music taste, which,
hell yeah,
I mean, seems like a of course type thing, because whenever you're a child, you're just trapped in the car, or
right. You have to listen to whatever they listen to.
Yeah. My daughter does not. She gets to dictate what she wants to listen to, but
that's awesome.
That's not necessarily how it was whenever I was a kid.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I think to broaden the category a little bit, we'll just fill it out. We'll fill it out because there are other parents, right?
Yeah.
When you're a kid, like, yeah, you're stuck with whatever your parents listen to while they're in the car or while they're at home or whatever. But then if you're like out with a friend, right? If you stay the night with a friend, sleep over, then there's still there's room for other influences. So I guess to make it a little bit more broad, maybe we can start with just our parents and then kind of branch out as feels natural to do so.
Yeah. The main thing that got me thinking about this topic in the first place wasn't even necessarily the topic itself. It was more my mom's drastic shift in what her music she listens to is.
We should, Joey, why didn't we get her to guest?
We should have, you're right.
We should call her up, see if she's free.
I'll FaceTime my mom and just get her to join the podcast.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But no obligation. We're already recording. We're live.
Yeah. But so whenever I was a kid in the 90s is whenever I was like a young child.
Right.
And my mom would just listen to whatever was on the radio, like the pop stations. So we'd be listening to like NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, like Britney Spears, just the typical boy band, or just like bubblegum. Yeah, 90s pop. Yeah. And that's what I listened to for a long time when I was a really little kid, because my mom was always driving me around, and we had like NSYNC live VHS tapes that we would watch. Wow. And it was like a thing between me and my brother. He liked NSYNC more and I liked the Backstreet Boys more.
That's so fascinating to me, because not your preference.
Yeah.
But just like, I don't know, maybe I got lucky in this aspect that my parents did not listen to pop. They did not listen to like mainstream radio.
Yeah.
But the idea of just being in that age and enjoying NSYNC or Backstreet Boys is so like interesting to me, because I wanted nothing to do with those bands.
Yeah. I mean, I think I generally just did not know better. Not saying I'm not hating on them at all by any means. They did their thing. They were super successful. That was the thing then, and they did it just about as well as you possibly could. I wouldn't necessarily listen to NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys now, but if I got turned on, I would at least know all the words. So, but now my mom is like, she goes to like Louder Than Life and listens to like Shine Down and Godsmack and
a little bit of hard rock.
Yeah, like Disturbed, all that type of stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I was thinking about it the other day and it was just like blowing my mind. I was like, it's crazy what like a shift has been made with her in comparison to my dad, who, as I got a little bit older and started riding more in the car with my dad has always listened to like classic rock. The music,
it's such a dad thing.
Exactly. It's like the music that was coming out when he was like a teenager is the music that he'll listen to for the rest of his life. And that's go for it. Yeah. Like, that's, I do that to an extent. I listen to a lot of I listened to a lot of music that at least came out around that time. Maybe I wasn't necessarily listening to it at the time, but I listened to a lot of music that came out around that time.
And I think part of that, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no.
Part of that, like, change is hard. Change is harder when you are an adult. And like, obviously our parents were not old, but they weren't young, I guess, when like big technology booms started happening. So I guess what I'm getting at is that for us, it's easier to be more flexible with what we listen to because music has been accessible for us.
Yeah.
Right. It's been so easy for us to find new music, and it's been less like, I mean, in high school, like, yeah, it's still kind of clicky, right? Where people like, oh, there's the emo crowd and there's the pop crowd and stuff like that. But like growing up with technology makes it easier for us to utilize it to like branch out. Whereas like our parents maybe they listened to what was on the radio, or they
Yeah.
listened to, you know, their record collection or their cassette tapes or whatever it may be, right? So I think that's worth, I guess, mentioning that like my dad's the same way, by the way. Like he's not like opposed to listening to new music, and like he's super supportive of me, and so like he finds it interesting when I come in wearing a band shirt. He'll ask me about the band, or if I'm listening to something while driving, then like he'll like talk to me about it. But he wouldn't seek out necessarily new music.
Yeah. And I mean, we're jaded at this point. Like you said, we have the technology, and we grew up always seeking out music, or at least came into adulthood or late teenhood always being able to just seek out music through, whether it be like iTunes or less than legal means,
Absolutely.
or like just the internet constantly recommending music to you. Like YouTube's been around since 2005, so that's
Right.
been most of my life. YouTube has been a thing, and music is all over that. Music that's not even on streaming services now. Like,
Yeah, and now like Bandcamp is a thing. It's so
oh
easy to
yeah,
find like very underground stuff, I guess, or very like unknown stuff.
yeah. It is. I mean, that is probably a big chunk of it, because it's like the record collection. My dad's record collection, I got to see a decent chunk of it, and he had like some crazy records that would go for like $50, $60 now at like
Right.
a classic vinyl store. Just, and he picked them up like at the time whenever they were new. But as I got older and started listening to more of the music my dad listened to, that I kind of gravitated towards that instead. And it was like something, it clicked with me in a way that wasn't just like, yeah, I'm listening to this music and
Right.
it's
It
making me move.
resonated a bit more.
Yeah, it meant more. And like it, so my dad listened to a lot of classic rock, but then he also listened to Bob Marley.
Hell yeah.
So like it was just this weird, like, and that's where I first, like, I mean, I knew about reggae and everything, but
Sure.
I started listening to a lot, and then using the technology that I had, reached out and like tried to branch out and listen to more reggae, and went through a long reggae phase.
Yeah.
It was a thing, but yeah, I don't know. It was, and then that ended up becoming something that we kind of like bonded over, because I was never a sports person. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid, but I never
Never
cared
cared.
about
Right.
it. But like we'd go to like, we've been to like, saw Rush like 4 times before Neil Peart died. Rest
Rest
in
in peace.
peace. But yeah, it was just this cool thing. And my mom's music tastes were ever changing. Now she listens. She. I was over there earlier today, and she said something about wanting Kid Rock to come back to around here, and I was just like, "Oh no, mom."
Yeah, you're going down a path I can't follow. Man, Kid Rock. That's a whole other discussion, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
But yeah, it's so, my experience growing up with music is completely different in a lot of ways. I mean, my dad, classic rock. That was his thing. I feel like that's a dad thing. At least in the Midwest, that just seems to be the
oh
thing
yeah,
where dads love classic rock. And who can blame them, man?
it
Like,
was good.
no, who doesn't like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and stuff like that? And like it's kind of funny to me. I started a playlist um a couple years ago, I guess, and I called it Pool Rock because the songs that I put on that playlist would be played when we would go to visit like my parents' friends, right? They had a pool.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we would fuck around in the pool or whatever, and they would just be playing classic rock the whole time. And so like a lot of those songs that got a lot of radio play around that time, like for classic rock, are just remind me of that very like specific location, I guess. But aside from that, right, I didn't have a lot of exposure to pop on the radio, like at my own, like within my own family, which I guess is why I kind of mentioned at the start branching out. But my mom was a country music fan. She wasn't a country musician. I was
Oh
going to
my
say
god.
country musician fan, but that doesn't. That
She's a
she
fan
was
of country musicians.
right, which isn't wrong, but there's a better way to say that, and that is that she was a fan of country music. Um, but yeah, so she listened to like Loretta Lynn, Reba McEntire, Alan Jackson,
Alan Jackson.
things like that were like I consider it pre pop country,
Yeah.
but in all reality, it was pop country, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you had like Faith Hill and Trisha Yearwood and stuff like that. So she listened to a lot of that stuff, and I hated it. I loathed it. I'm still not super keen on it, but there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
I guess from time to time, and obviously it's nice that it like reminds me of my mom. So in those kind of like sweet sentimental ways, like sure, I'll allow it. But yeah, so she listened to a lot of country music. My dad listened to a lot of classic rock, and I never. I did listen to a lot of classic rock. I'm my father's son. I'm a daddy's boy,
Yeah.
way more than I was ever a mama's boy. So like I tend to gravitate towards things that he like his interests, right? Programming, computers and stuff. He was into that stuff. And so I kind of went into that. And so like I started collecting music pretty young, I think, but it was never like pop music. It was always like Eric Clapton's greatest hits or ACDC or Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. Just things that were familiar. So I have a bunch of those still, just a bunch of CDs. I still buy CDs occasionally.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shifting more to buying vinyls only, and I don't buy as much music as I did in like my 20s. But yeah, so it just like pop music was. I don't want to say it was forbidden, but it kind of felt that way. It was like it was a special like occurrence when I would hear pop music
Yeah.
because I don't know, it was just like I would only hear it when I was like on the school bus for like in elementary school. The bus driver would listen to like pop radio or something, and I would never really pay that much attention to it. But I got familiar enough with the songs to not be like totally out of place or anything. And then like the other big place for me hearing pop would be when I would frequently go and spend the night with my friend, who will remain unnamed for anonymity sake. I've not spoken to this friend in a long time, so I just don't want to get anything there. But I would spend a lot of time with him and his family. And I mean, especially for those who don't know, my mom died when I was like 14 ish. And I guess at that time, we weren't spending as much time together, but we were still hanging out a lot. And so like
Yeah.
his family kind of was like a secondary family for me for a very long time. And they would always listen to like pop and whatever, like hip hop even. Like he was super into hip hop, and I was never like big into hip hop
Yeah.
in the 90s and stuff. But so I guess in that aspect, it felt like a treat, but it also felt kind of like a taboo kind of thing because
Yeah.
my family didn't listen to it at all. So it's just like, oh, this is like this music isn't what I'm used to, and it's not like what my parents would approve of necessarily,
Yeah.
especially with like some of the hip hop and stuff like Lil Jon, right? My
Oh
parents
my god. Yeah.
would not be thrilled with Lil Jon's Get Low, but yeah. So that was kind of my like growing up, and I don't think as I have grown as like a person and just like my interests have grown in music specifically, I feel like honestly there's not a lot of influence left over. Or I'm not even sure that there was a whole lot of influence. I mean, obviously I bought a lot of classic rock CDs, so like that influence was obviously there. But when I started like discovering my own stuff, which was in like high school, middle school, maybe even. It was never like driven by that. I
Yeah.
suppose I gravitated towards metal and stuff like that, and I didn't even like. I honestly like. I didn't start listening to pop music in general until like after I graduated,
Yeah.
like high school. Because it was just like I was a metal guy, I was a metalhead, and I listened to metal. I listened to electronic a lot because I don't know. I feel like there's a weird overlap. There's like a large amount of overlap between people that listen to electronic music and people that listen to metal. And I guess it's probably like comes down to the beats, right?
Yeah.
It's very like driven and it's just different. It's not pop. So that's kind of
That's the
where
main thing.
yeah, that's where it was for me. Um, but yeah, so I don't know if necessarily I would credit a whole lot of my musical like influence to my dad or my mom, other than the fact that I like collected classic rock CDs.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and like, I mean, my mom got into a lot of the rock bands, like the current rock bands at the time. They were current whenever I was a teenager. I was
Sure,
listening to them already, and then it was like she started listening to them. Like whenever I was like 13 or whatever,
there's like a
listening to like,
reverse influence there.
yeah, it was like I was listening to like Godsmack and Shine Down and all those
Sure.
those types of bands. I which I'm gonna go on record saying like I don't know why I ever listened to that. Like,
I mean, it
what
was just like
it was what was coming out at the time, and it was rock, and I was enjoying rock, and it's
that. Like, and there's like another layer of accessibility with it because it's not just rock, right? It's not just metal. It's commercial. It's very
yeah,
commercialized and very like radio friendly in a way that like harder metal and stuff wasn't.
yeah,
It simply wasn't. Like there was no like electronic radio station back home. There was classic rock, there was country, there was pop and hip hop, and then there was like a modern rock. But
yeah, like
it was all bands like that.
the alternative
Right.
whatever it was. Yeah,
So
not to
it wasn't like incredibly easy for us to find anything else, I
yeah,
suppose. So like Godsmack and Disturbed and stuff, that was just kind of that was the metal that we had access to, and it was obviously it ended up being a gateway into like heavier stuff. But that was just I wouldn't say I wouldn't look down upon someone for having listened to Five Finger Death Punch. You know,
you better not. I saw them live at one point in my
I've
life.
seen them live too. They at the time that I saw them, they put on a really good show.
Yeah,
And then apparently, not too long after that, they started doing pretty bad shows.
yeah. See, and the thing is, not to get completely off topic, but it's like when I was a teenager, I was very like, I don't know, they had very macho lyrics and all that stuff.
Sure.
And it's like, I mean, their name is Five Finger Death Punch. It's like, oh, that's badass
Yeah.
whenever you're like 15.
It's edgy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's edgy. But then as I kind of became more like a fully fledged person, I started kind of like looking at their lyrics and stuff, and I was just like,
Yeah.
huh, okay. And then
They definitely leaned into like the
yeah,
alt right stuff, right?
yeah,
They kind of like embraced that because that's where their audience was.
yeah,
I think initially, like, I don't think their first album or maybe even their first two albums were like that. I don't know. I'd have to look back. I don't want to solidify
yeah.
anything, but like War is the Answer feels like it's like anti-war in a way.
I feel see, and I think there was part of me that like wanted to believe that whenever I was a kid,
Right.
and then it's like now I don't believe it. Like I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean
looking,
seeing the trend, right? You can see
yeah,
the full picture now.
and like, and I mean, a lot of their other songs are just like military stuff,
Oh, for
whatever,
sure.
and it's like
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm not gonna hate it. Like, not that I necessarily support.
Right.
Not saying I don't support the individual people that are
Exactly.
in the military. I don't
Yeah.
support it as a complex
Right.
that's being run by the government. That's
I
the
agree.
part I'm like, okay, no. It's like I'm not gonna go any further into this, but yeah, I
Yeah.
don't.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, but then I would start to look at it and I'd be like, oh my god, no. And it's
Yeah.
It's stuff
they
like
were early warning signs.
yeah, and stuff like Pantera. Like what the fuck? When like I look back at it now, and I'm just like, oh, I used to unironically listen to
Hey,
this all the time,
I
and now
mean,
it's
it was aggressive. I mean,
yeah,
that's a teenager thing, right? They like rebellion. They like aggression. They like to stick it to the man.
yeah.
You know,
Until you grow up a little bit, and you're like, oh my god,
until you pay attention. Yeah,
Phil Anselmo's an actual like fucking white supremacist. Okay,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
cool it down, guys. But
yeah. That does.
all this just get back on topic before I fucking
I
I
mean,
don't
this
know.
we're just rambling. It's fine.
Yeah. Um. But yeah, so like my mom didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say her music tastes had an effect on me. My dad's did, in the sense that I feel like it was the true gateway to my future of discovering music, where I would
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I was a kid who had no idea how to use the internet, and I would try to find like, I started finding like rock bands, and then some newer rock bands that I liked, and then some metal bands that I liked, and then reggae, and then like it branched out from there, where I was like, okay, well maybe I can like two genres. I can like metal
Right.
and I can like reggae. What if I find reggae metal and then find like do stuff
Yeah.
like that? And then I'm
Dude,
like,
have you
oh
listened to Skindred?
yes.
Skindred is so good. At least their old stuff was. I haven't listened to a lot of their new stuff, but like their first album, I think it was, which got a decent amount, I think, of like radio play. Not
Yeah.
around us, but
Yeah. In
they
general.
did well. Yeah,
But
that's some good shit.
yeah. And I guess to your point about, I mean, teenagers liking to rebel, that's kind of like the flawed start of this like whole topic, is like you're
Right.
gonna hear your parents' music and then you're gonna be like, no, I reject that. I'm gonna
Yeah,
listen to my own
and it's
stuff.
not. And on top of that, like, yeah, part of that is rebellion, I think, but part of that is also like you're trying to find your own identity,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to be what other people are being.
Yeah.
And well, at least I didn't. I guess I should say. I feel like there were certain cliques in like high school, even, that like people just wanted to be like their parents in a way. And
Yeah.
I get we all do to some degree. Like I said, like I was a daddy's boy, where I kind of like went into computer stuff just because like that's what he was into, and I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting, and now it kind of stuck. So like not to say that like I'm better than anybody that's trying to be like their parents, but that wasn't the objective, I
Yeah.
guess. It was never my intention, right? Everyone's trying to like figure out who they are, and I think music was it's an easy way to define yourself,
Yeah.
or to find like other people that enjoy the same things that you
Yeah.
do, and that's how you make friends in high school, right? You find music that you listen to that you like, and you find other people that like that music, and it's something to bond over, I think, which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
I don't know how normal people do it without music, honestly. Like I
Me
feel
either.
like so much of my opinion of someone comes from the kind of music that they listen to, which it shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is, but I feel like there's some insight there.
I mean, there definitely is. As much as as shallow as it sounds,
Right.
the type of music somebody listens to, like, and brands themselves as, I guess, because
Right.
that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. I mean, not saying that anybody does listen to music strictly to anybody outside of high school anyways listens to music strictly to be like, this is who I am, I listen
Right.
to this, but you choose to, typically
You
music kind
identify.
of, yeah, you identify with it. Typically music has kind of a general mindset for each genre or whatever. Like somebody who listens to country is going to be on on the whole a much different person than the type of person that like listens to fucking house
Black metal
music or black
or
metal,
house.
like
Yeah.
whatever. Just, I don't know, you're gonna find a lot of a different personality.
Yeah, and
And
I guess part of that's that like music reflects life in a way. So like the things that you're going to resonate with are the things that are going to speak to your lifestyle in some way, right? Or you'll have something in common with. So like a lot of like the country musicians and country music is popular in very like rural areas where there are a lot of like farming and cattle and stuff like that.
Yeah, cattle, trains.
Whereas like moving into more urban settings, right, hip hop is going to have a much bigger like part of people's lifestyles. So it's kind of just like a spectrum of where you fall geographically,
Yeah,
and also like what's accessible and what's
and then
popular.
it's compounded because of the fact that the radio only tends to play like whenever I moved out to fucking where I live now, which is kind of, I would say it's a more rural area than I've ever lived in before.
Sure.
There's like fucking 10 country stations. There's like
Yeah.
there's 2 modern pop stations, and there's like a there's like 5 Jesus stations, and then there's like classic rock station, and it's like, so if you're growing up here, you have not a lot of options if you
Yeah.
listen to the radio, which nowadays who listens to the
Nobody
radio?
listens. Nobody listens
But
to the radio.
but if in back in the day, like if that were the case and you lived in an area that only had country, you're probably just going to listen to country because that's
Yeah, and like I guess tying it all together, right? If that's probably what your parents listen to too.
yep.
And so like that's what you're going to be around, that's what you're going to be exposed to, and that's going to be like what you want to listen to fit in with your parents, right? To have that connection, you're going to want to bond, I guess, using that. So
Now I want to know what my grandpa listened to whenever he was younger.
yeah,
Whenever
I
like my
think about
dad was
that.
growing up.
I think about that like fairly often. Well, I wouldn't say often, more frequently than I would suspect a lot of people do. And just like how crazy, how big of a difference, I guess, the musical landscape has become within a couple generations.
Yeah.
Like it's insanely diverse,
Mm-hmm.
like everything. And I'm like, I went to the park earlier today because there some like they're playing live music, just like hanging out, free music and burgers and hot dogs and stuff. I don't know
Nice.
what I don't know. I don't think there was like a fundraiser for anything. I think it was just like everyone just agreed to like meet up and grill out and
Dude,
have
that's
a good
sick.
time. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But they were like playing, a lot of it was like bluesy classic rock and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then they also like did fuck, I can't think of the artist's name. The song's called Sleepwalking. I don't know. It's a very old song.
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, it's so cool to like be able to, sorry, I'm trying to pull up something.
I am too.
To be able to like hear Santo and Johnny is the
Okay.
artist.
Yeah.
Let me see what year that was. I don't think I'm going to be able to find a year because it's all just fucking remasters and re-releases. But yeah, it was so like, it was surprising to me to be able to hear that and then think that like this is what pop music was, right, back before we had like full on like rock and roll, like before rock and roll existed. This is how music was. And
Yeah.
thinking like even back farther than that, like with doo-wop and stuff, like that's what music was. And there wasn't really like a huge amount of variety not too long ago.
Yeah.
Whereas today there's just like there's so many like subgenres and subgenres and very like niche descriptors for things, because we've been able to like broaden the spectrum of what music is.
Fun fact, whenever I was just trying to find Sleepwalk, I found what I think may be a Deftones cover of Sleepwalk
Oh, that'd be
on their
interesting.
covers album. I don't know if it's an actual cover or if it's a new song, but I found it and
I
it's
will
on
be
an album called.
listening to that regardless after this podcast.
So
The original released in 1959, by the way.
yeah,
So it was kind of
and,
like that's not that long ago.
yeah. Maybe I'm seeing my dad for Memorial Day on Monday, so maybe I'll ask. I know what my grandpa on my mom's side listened to, and that
Yeah.
was country because he grew up in the fucking sticks.
Yeah.
So that's just how it was. Except his was like bluegrassy, backwoods type country.
We
Not
should do a parents episode.
yes.
I think we should get I should get my dad. My dad would be down, I'm sure. He would leave at the opportunity to talk about like, well, because I think it's something I never thought about, right? When my dad was young, I think when he was really young, he lived out in BFE in like Shoals, Indiana,
mm-hmm.
which is like out past Paoli, like just like
way out there,
super secluded and shit, which to me doesn't call out as classic rock.
Yeah.
And my grandma doesn't listen to classic rock. I don't think she listens to like. This is a very limited, I guess, insight into what she listens to, but she listened to like a lot of like classical like Austrian music and stuff like that, because her mother was like born and raised in Austria, and I think my grandmother was born in Austria or something, and they moved over. But then my dad also like ended up going to Chicago, and he lived in Chicago for a while, like throughout his like teenage / college years. I'm not really sure. So I think that could be a fun discussion to have. Just kind of walking through their musical history to kind of like to figure out how that has in just a generation essentially changed, and how that's affected like what I listen to.
Yeah.
In some weird ways.
I know some, I don't know if they're like my great aunts or something on my mom's side. They have a gospel like trio.
That's so cool.
Because they're, I mean, not gospel like the, I don't know, like the big like bombastic type stuff you'd hear with like a full chorus, and it's just three women and some like banjos and guitars and stuff.
That's very cool.
But, yeah, it's like a folksy gospel type thing. And then my grandpa played the saxophone in like a band ensemble, like a big band ensemble with like a singer and stuff at some point. But
I don't know if any of my family has ever touched an instrument. I think I'm a trendsetter within our family for that.
You can be the start of some change in your family.
Yeah,
you can inspire.
Except somebody. I don't want kids. So
your
brother
nephews. Has it. Yeah, I was about to say your brother has a kid.
He has two kids.
It's two kids.
I got nephews. So I can leak into their brains and instill some.
And if you have any like little cousins, or what are your cousins' kids called?
I was just thinking. I don't know.
Nah, whatever they're called.
Sub-cousins.
Sub-cousins. Smaller cousins.
Smaller cousins.
You can inspire them too.
Yeah, maybe I will. But yeah, so that was fun. I think we might get my dad roped in. I don't know how you feel about getting one of your parents or both of your parents roped in.
I can ask. My dad doesn't. I don't know if my dad would trust being on the internet.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
it is what it is. So stay tuned for that, everyone, for if/when that happens. We'll have another guest episode, I suppose, starring my father, at least.
Yes.
Which will be awkward and fun, hopefully. But yeah, until then, I guess let us know your thoughts on what we have discussed, right? If you have some cool stories about your parents and how they've influenced your music tastes, and then let us know. Send us an email, because maybe we'd see it. but
I can't promise anything. But
we are so bad at social media. So I guess really, if you're listening to this, the sincerest thanks for like for doing so, just because we are so like not social media oriented, and
we're not
so
giving anything back to you guys.
Yeah, we're just kind of fucking around at this point. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for staying in our feedback loop.
Bye.